Hello, everybody. We're live to talk about Ship of Destiny by Robin Hobb, which I put away after filming my wrap-up, so I don't actually have it out here, which I normally...
I didn't grab my
There it is.
Yeah.
Yay.
I got it because I can't remember my notes otherwise.
It's, you know what?
Mine is over there. I have one note. I'm just kidding.
It's okay.
I have a few notes.
So, we've had, a couple people haven't been able to make it, which is totally fine. It has been, it's been a week for a lot of people. So I understand. Hello, hi Jessica. Hi Renee.
You know what I should do is I should pull up the live show so that I can actually, in fact, respond to comments.
Yeah.
I did that and then I forgot to mute it and I was like, what's going on?
Yes, you have to mute it.
I just muted the site because I am very bad at I'm not using headphones right now.
Oh yeah. Smart. Okay, so I guess if y'all want to, since we can introduce yourselves and I guess quick thoughts on this last book. I feel like this is going to be an interesting conversation.
Oh, will it ever?
Okay.
Kara.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Kara. My channel is Wild Book Garden. Overall thoughts, do you want us to give like rating and
sure,
kind of an overview?
Rating and kind of like a, your 1 or 2 sentence sort of feeling.
So this was my least favorite book in the series. I gave it 2.5 stars. I liked some of the thematic stuff around Bingtown, but I really wasn't a fan of a lot of the character and story choices, especially near the end, and especially regarding Kenneth. I hate it all. So, yeah.
Hi, I'm Margaret. I'm over at the Other Word Nerd, and I apologize if I get extra salty tonight. This was also my least book in the series. I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. I am both mad and disappointed. It's particularly one plot choice because the plot that I signed up for, why did it exist is honestly like what I was left asking at the end of the book because it really didn't affect anything. I ended up giving it 1 star.
Wow. Okay. Gosh.
This is going to be a divided live show.
This is going to be a little interesting. Hi, I'm Dasha. My channel is Mythic Pages, and I gave this 4.5 stars. Okay, here's the thing. I use, when I'm not sure on my rating, like when my heart is telling me a different thing than like my rational reviewer brain, I use the Copile rating system. Mm-hmm. And based on that, it gave me 4.5 because I still couldn't fault a lot of the things, like a lot of the actual like technical elements, but my enjoyment like just slowly just declined. I really was not like, I started this like, holy shit, like everything's gonna come together. It's gonna be so good. And then towards the end, I was like, I feel like I need a shower.
Yeah.
So I think I'm on the same page as you guys on a lot of the same things. I just I couldn't fault a lot of it though. But I didn't love it. This is also my least favorite, 100%.
Okay.
I rate on how I feel.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Okay. So, this was my least favorite, but also the first 2 books were favorite books of the year. I still gave it 4.5 stars. Like, I think so. I mean, like there were parts of it that were definitely hard to read. And like, I did ding it slightly on some things that I'm like, I don't know that I love some of it. However, it'll be interesting to talk about, like, did a lot of the story make me happy? No. However, I do feel like she is a very good observer of humanity. Is it realistic? Yes. And so I guess that's like, I don't know. So we can talk about it. I do think it's interesting. Like, it was definitely rough to read though, like especially the last 25%. But I just like, yeah. But I can understand why you might hate those choices. They're not enjoyable for sure.
Yeah, we'll get into it's not necessarily the
Carrie.
choices, because a lot of the choices I could have been like okay with. It's just certain elements of the plot. I felt like, why did we have those in there if this is what you were going to do?
For me, it's not so much like the choices. I mean, I know I said some of the choices that Hobb made, but it's like how they happened. Like, because I think the gaslighting and the way that's handled, as you said, Bethany, it's extremely realistic. And so I'm not like knocking it for that. I have issues with like the decisions she made about who participates in it, and then expecting us to still care about what happens to them at the end of the book. And it's like, I don't anymore. That was a deal breaker character moment for me. And it's like, now like half of your main cast, I don't care what happens to anymore. Like I tend to rate like about half and half on like enjoyment, and then like as objective as we can be. And so that's kind of why I ended up where I did.
Like, I do agree with you, Bethany, that she is a fantastic, like, so much of what was happening made sense. Kara and I were talking, and some of the stuff that Kara doesn't like, I was actually okay with, had we seen some justice at the end, and I did not feel like there was some justice.
Well, that's what
But again, realistic. Like, do people actually get justice? Usually, no.
But is told me at the beginning of the series?
Well, but I don't know that that's necessarily what she tries to sell. Like, I think she does things that are hard and realistic. Like, because like her first series is also like that. I mean, not the same way, but like she doesn't write things that are like easy endings. She does write things that feel like how the world would actually happen in real life. But
the antagonist in the Farseer trilogy felt less morally ambiguous, or like she was trying to redeem him.
Yes, that's my issue.
This is what my problem with this is, that it felt like she tried at the end to redeem our antagonists. And it felt like they were immortalized in the world in a positive light. And I really, because in the Farseer trilogy, we have, Regal. And he is just objectively like a terrible person. And like, she kind of tries to redeem him, but like, it's not really, it doesn't feel as personal, because he was just like a shitty person, but you didn't get as much of this like visceral interaction.
We're not watching him do it. Like,
exactly.
So this is a little hard as he's doing it. We don't know we don't know the contrast between who people see Regal as and who he is.
Exactly.
So personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I think Kenneth is interesting because like, I hated him by the end, absolutely. But you also know that he is partly a product of what happened to him. And that like, I don't know, like, I do find it interesting that the way she chose to do it, because I also think it is realistic that like, there are, for instance, like families of guys who are, who assault young women, for instance, and their families still like love them a lot of the time, and don't want to believe anything bad about them. So I guess that's the thing, is to me, I was like, this is hard to read, but this is how the world is too, often.
I didn't have any problem with how that was handled in regards to King, because I understood where everyone was coming from in that particular, like, I understood why it was so hard for Winthrop to believe. I understood why the crew was on Kenneth's side and why they were so easily led to believe what he was saying. My problem is the initial catalyst of what got us to this place. The reason that everyone was there on that ship, the core plot thing that was the motivation for one of the characters.
You can just tell us what it is. You can say what it is.
Spoilerland. Go for it, Margaret.
We start. I don't know. I didn't know if we were getting into spoilers.
Yeah, it's fine.
We start this book. We start this series. The beginning of the series is about the fact that Althea has been betrayed by her entire family in losing her inheritance. And I know that gets tricky because Vivacia has her own things.
Right.
She's been completely betrayed. And it was about a young woman doing what had to happen to get her ship back, to get back what was hers, to seek justice. And so we have that. And then we have the rape that occurs. And no justice is given to Althea. You might as well have taken Althea out of the book. I also don't see why the rape was in there in the first place, because it does not really contribute to, like, we could have done it without that. Like,
That's interesting.
The Althea not getting the Vivacia thing, this is one of the things I think Margaret is actually more angry than I am, because I suspected, like, the whole time, I'm like, there is no way she's going to give us what we want. Like, that's just not what she does. And so I looked up, I don't remember if I mentioned this on our last live show. There were a couple of little things that I'm like, I need to spoil myself so I don't, like, lose my mind when this happens. And that was one of the things I spoiled myself for.
It felt like Game of Thrones all over again, because it was Brashen gets a ship. Wintro gets a ship. Althea gets to be first mate because we can't let women have too much power. And I did not sign up for Brashen as captain and Althea as first mate. I signed up based on the description of the first book for Althea as captain of her own ship and Brashen as first mate.
That's interesting.
That's a good point. That's a really good. So I was going to say, it felt like it made sense for how the series was going. It felt like there was a logical progression to that point. So, like, I wasn't surprised when she didn't get the ship, because it was setting up Vivacia as her own person, and she got to choose.
Right.
So excited about that, because I was like, so we're going to get to this point and it's going to be Vivacia's choice. And I'm like, I was so ready for her to choose Althea, because Althea spent her entire life on that ship, and 1 year with Wintro is what.
Yeah, but Vivacia doesn't want that anymore. Like, she is a different person, and I think that's part of it, is that, like, that, to me, that was the whole point, is that all of them started out with initial goals and motivations that they wanted, but through the course of the book, they all went through so many things and changed, and by the end of it, they're different people and don't necessarily want or need the same things that they did at the beginning. And, like, which also I think happens to people. I
think it could have been done more convincingly for Althea, because that happened pretty close to the end.
It happened so close to the end.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, it just was one of those things that, like, we could have had Vivacia be a different person, and she still could have delivered on that promise of the premise from the first book, because it could have been, like, I think she would have needed to get on the ship sooner, but it could have been about Vivacia and Althea coming to accept each other as they were, and still finding a kinship based on their shared past.
But Althea did abandon Vivacia when she quickened, and I think it felt like Althea got, like, a deserved consequence for being an impulsive human being and, like, trying to, you know, put her own feelings towards Kyle and her sister and her mother. And it felt like there was some kind of consequence for her just abandoning, like, running away and feeling all butthurt. And then the ship was like, well, you know, Wintro was there. And yes, it was a shorter amount of time, but Vivacia was her own person.
It was the whole time she was awakened, though, because, like, with Vivacia, because with Althea, it was all before she had awakened, and her first interaction with Althea was her leaving her.
Her first interaction with Althea was her quickening her, but you have to consider, it comes back to choice again, because Althea did not have a choice. Kyle was not letting her back on that ship. That was the whole reason he brought Wintro.
Of course. But I'm just saying that from Vivacia's perspective, like, she's like, you abandoned me. Like, that's how it would feel to her.
You didn't fight for me.
You didn't fight for me. You abandoned me. And so regardless of, like, whether Althea could have or not, like, because, like, for a kid, it's the same way, right? Like, if somebody leaves a kid, even if they can't make a choice, that still feels like traumatic abandonment to a child. And that's basically what Vivacia was at that point.
I'm not talking about, like, character perspectives and character choices. I'm talking about storytelling choices here. And that absolutely is a storytelling choice that Robin Hobb could have made. And she did not. And I would have preferred that Althea's story not have been so singularly focused on getting Vivacia back, if that is not what was going to be. That, like, I wish we had something else introduced so it doesn't feel like she's getting a consolation prize and a demotion at the same time.
Yeah, the fact that she's going to be her husband's first mate instead of captain, I'm like, really? I mean, like, Brashen grew on me. I liked him more by the end, but I still wish that, like, it's like we didn't, I don't know, kind of like we were saying, is like, Althea, obviously she's not going to
together because it felt like we were cheated of what we should have, like what we could have had.
I mean, she lost in every capacity, and I think that's an odd. Sorry, Bethany, go ahead.
Sorry,
no, you're good. You're good. I was gonna say, I mean, on one hand, I get it because, like, yeah, would it be like a great fun ending to have her like be the captain of her own ship? Like, yeah, but also, again, with the realism, like the number of women who have these grand ideas of things they want to do and dreams they're going to go for, who end up like scaling it back for a man in their life is enormous. I mean, like, just like honestly, like that.
I think like the realism thing would make more sense for me if it wasn't contradicted, what I feel like, by some of the character stuff, because I feel like Robin Hobb is like super obvious about how you're supposed to feel about every character. And we're clearly supposed to like really like Brashen. We're clearly supposed to find some kind of peace with Kenneth, which I refuse.
I don't think I didn't feel like we were. Either. I don't think we are. I don't
mean that we're okay with what he did. I mean, like the way that his like ending is portrayed, and how like Wintro and Vivacia are, and kind of the rest of his fan club are just like, he was a complicated man. And I'm like,
I think we're supposed to be horrified at that. Like, I think we're supposed to realize that that's effed up.
Okay.
Like, I don't think we're supposed to be at peace with that. I think we're supposed to see that they do that and be like, no.
I think that's the entire
point to show how charismatic.
Yeah.
I think it's supposed to show like how charismatic abusers can be, because if they're nice to you, then they can't possibly be shitty to someone else.
But I don't feel like we're supposed to judge. I don't think we're supposed to judge Wintro and Vivacia as much as I do. Like that's just the feeling I get from the way that whole ending part was written.
I mean, I judge them a lot.
I judge them too. I like don't care what happens to them anymore, which I think is like unfortunate when they're like some of the main characters and there's only like 3 that I like enjoy them. I like their storyline. I think it's interesting, and like we get some kind of satisfaction, which not that it has to be like, I wasn't asking for a happy ending. I was asking for like
satisfaction
for it to feel like it was earned by the way she'd been like setting up the characters in the story, and I don't feel like it was in some places.
Yeah, there's a difference between an ending that is fun, like you can have a not fun ending but still have some audience satisfaction.
I guess I wasn't expecting audience satisfaction. I knew going into the series not to expect that, I guess, is what it.
Yeah, and that feels really cheap to me. Like,
yeah, maybe we're using satisfaction differently, because I don't mean like everyone gets justice who deserves it. I mean, like, I want to feel like reading these books got me somewhere, and I don't know that it always did. Like, there's lots of endings
mattered, and it didn't. Like, if it doesn't matter at the end, if you don't land the ending for me, and it doesn't matter to me at the end, you've lost me.
Yeah, like there's lots of endings that are very like bittersweet, or that are really sad, but that feel like justified, or not justified, that feel like it makes sense for the story. Like when it happens, you're like, oh, of course. And I feel like that's what she was going for with this one, and it didn't really hit for me. And maybe part of that is just the sheer number of characters and things that like there's so many characters, you would think that just by the laws of probability, at least some of them would get something that we wanted for them. I mean, thank God, like Amber and Paragon and Clef, the only ones I cared about, I am shocked they made it through okay, because they were the ones I liked.
Yeah,
I thought Clef was going to be canon for.
Oh my God, I was so sure Clef was going to die. I was like, there's no way she's keeping this kid alive. He's
glad.
Too innocent and funny and sweet. He's dead.
I don't think that's.
I think this is interesting. I guess this is how I read it also, honestly, that she came to see her prior resistance as slave. I mean, that is kind of how I felt about it. But it's interesting.
That was one of those things that it's like, then why was she so why was she so fond about Althea for 2 whole books? Why was all of it about why did it just. Yeah,
I guess I didn't think that she was.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
I didn't get that from her. Like
I felt like she was just worried about herself and like finding herself as a person. But I didn't get I think she really just wanted to feel kinship with someone. And she compared Wintro to Althea.
Yeah.
So
if
listen,
I wanted Grimdark Fantasy, I would have read Grimdark Fantasy.
well, and I think that's the thing is people don't realize that's what she kind of writes.
Yeah.
Like, I think people assume, like, because women usually do write things that are like not this dark, but like this is kind of what she writes is she does write realism into her books in a way that I get is not for everybody. Like I totally get that, like if you want what you want is like escapism or like you want, you know what I mean? Like I understand why this may not be like.
Well, here's the thing. I still like the Farseer trilogy as of right now. I haven't finished the last book quite yet, but like, and I have no problem with how dark.
Okay, but wait till you get to the ending. I'm just telling you. I'm just saying, I don't think you're gonna like the ending of it.
I already know that the one character that I care about is in future books.
Yeah, but
so as long as that happens, I don't actually.
I think also like
I don't think you're gonna. I think given this, I don't know if you're gonna like the ending of that either. Honestly,
it is a lot less satisfying.
I think like so. I did not think this series was going to be escapism. That like wasn't even. Like, didn't even think there was a chance, honestly. I just think, like, writing a realistic story where there are consequences and there is some heartbreak there, I think all of that can still happen in a way that doesn't cheapen, like, the rest of the story. Because I feel like a lot of things that happened, like, I don't know, this is also, I recognize a personal thing. It tends to bug me when we finish a long series. And, you know, there's 2,700 pages, even if they're only 3 books. It does bug me when we finish a whole series and the author, like, undoes the main premise. And I understand that, like, getting something different, like with the Vivacia choosing not to take Althea. I understand that getting something different than you expected is not bad writing. But it's also how I feel about some thrillers where it's like anybody can write a surprising plot twist if you don't set it up well. I feel like a lot of the things that happened here weren't set up well as I thought they were going to be.
So I just like it. We got the conversation with Althea and Vivacia talking about how Vivacia was different. We never got a straight up rejection or any closure with them. Maybe I would have been okay with it if we had gotten some closure with them, if there had been a conversation, but it was just Althea made a choice. And did not ask Vivacia what she wanted.
Well, which is exactly why she doesn't deserve to be the captain, honestly.
I think it was,
I don't know.
3 books trying to make up for that mistake.
But she still
undone.
Yeah, I just think that she still didn't. I guess that's the thing. And maybe this is like what's interesting about it is like to me, the point of the book or the premise of the series wasn't really about that anyway. Like to me, and I guess this is also like what you read for, maybe like, and maybe is like a difference. Like for me, like a lot of the premise of it was about like personhood and like enslavement and like how that fits into like, I don't know, like, and how that goes into like things like gender and identity. And like, to me, that was the project of the series. You know what I mean? Like, I guess I just didn't think that the project of it, like we have these characters that we're following and they have things that they want and that they're doing and arcs that they're going to go through. But like, for me, reading it, the project was the thematic content that she was wanting to explore, less than like wanting specific arcs for these characters. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just like, if you end a character's arc in some way that makes me feel like all of their stuff was wasted, I was like, I was mad. Like, and that's when I started realizing what was going to happen. And I almost quit the book multiple times.
I definitely feel like the ending felt a bit rushed in that.
Which is hilarious. Like, these books are so long.
Like there should have been a little bit more room for like these discussions to give a little bit of closure. Like you'd mentioned about the like Althea and Vivacia not having a discussion about what's happening and some kind of closure there. And then we saw like years into the future with Rain and Malta, but it felt just kind of like, you know,
I think it was a few months into the future. It wasn't years for Rain and Malta. Because it was just during their
fair, but it still felt like things just like got wrapped up with like a neat little bow, and it felt like Hobb didn't want to sit down and like have discussions with the characters and how they're going to impact, how their choices are going to impact other characters. And it was just like, well, here are they now. This is what it is. And
well, and I think because they're going to continue in other books. Like I know Malta shows up in later books. And I do like, I know that the ending is like the biggest emotional piece of it, but at some point I do want to talk about some of the other thing, because we learned a lot of interesting stuff in this book too that I do want to talk about as well.
But why was that the thread that holds it together? There are so many other ways we could have had this plot and not had this single-minded focus from this one character.
Yeah,
like
this is interesting to me because this is not actually like the Vivacia and Althea thing. It's not actually my least favorite thing about the book. For me, it's like a symptom of other issues I've been having, which is like the way that, I don't know. I know a lot of people love her character development. I just think it doesn't convince me the way it does other people.
Yeah.
I did like Althea getting to the end after all this and having a moment of like, I have devoted so much time to this. Is it even what I want? Is it even what Vivacia wants? Like having her internal monologue, which is again why I wish we had more closure, like Margaret had mentioned.
Which I mean, I think is fair.
I wish we had, because seeing her have that realization, again, that feels kind of realistic, because you're like, sometimes you chase this thing. A lot of people at school, for example, like you chase this degree and then you come to it and you're like, I absolutely hate this.
Like this isn't even what I want.
It felt like though when I was reading it, it felt like she's like, oh, I'm not going to get this. I guess I'll give up now. Like that's how it felt.
That's interesting.
That's fair. I think
that's fair. I think it's just not like how I interpreted it.
I also didn't like the fact that the last moment that we have with Althea and Brashen, who were my two favorite characters, is her telling him about her rape. I wish that had come earlier. And then we just ended on them finding this magnificent treasure trove. Like that was a really odd.
So you know what's funny, and I don't know if this is going to be an unpopular opinion. Like the thing that I wasn't sure how I felt about, honestly, was the like sort of magic removal of her trauma.
Yeah, that's one of the things.
That was like, if there was an issue I had, that was my thing that I was like,
such a problem for me.
I think like similarly, that's one of the things that really frustrated me with the way that Kennett was handled. I don't see why we had to bring a magical reason into it. Like it would be enough to me to see that he has experienced sexual trauma and he's one of those people who takes that out on others. I don't like that he like magically gave all of his pain to Paragon, because there's like a throwaway line about how like somehow connecting that to his ability to feel emotions and that's why he is the way he is. And I don't like when evil characters are given a like speculative fiction reason for being the way they are, because it's hard not to take that as, are we supposed to view this as an extenuating circumstance? Like I think that was
I understand that. I guess I saw it more as like a metaphor for like dissociation.
It made Paragon better. I guess like it made him more realistic, but it took away from Kennett.
And here again is my central issue: is Althea was the main character from the beginning. Malta wasn't even a main character until the end. So the fact that we got that for Keffria, for Malta, for all of that, and then we don't get it for the person who started the freaking book. But yes, I understood with Kennett, because that is how he coped, and what you have to do to cope with trauma. Like, I'm not going to judge you with that. The fact that he then turned it into becoming a terrible person, you know, that's a choice.
That whole thing
I didn't like, nothing about what happened with Althea and her sexual assault was a well-written thing for me. It felt cheap, like it was just there to cause trauma, like it was just there to get the reader and invoke reactions in other characters. Like that's all it was there for. It was not used really well in her storyline. And then again, we have that trauma magically taken away. Yeah, like the magic trauma thing I have more of an issue with. That honestly, that was the thing that dropped it for me from like 5 stars to 4.5. But okay, Derry. Reasons why the memory stuff is involved, but I can't tell you because this
it has to read by itself, and that's one of the things. Like, I don't like Robin Hobb threatening me with rereading them. Like, I was like, I also like I love rereading books I enjoy, but I don't like when like part of the meaning is intentionally withheld from you until later. Like I don't know if I'm going to commit to 16 books hoping that you fix this. Like
it's fun to have authors that put in Easter eggs for other storylines and also have like side characters that we don't have stuff resolved in, especially if you know that they frequently. But when you have that happen with main characters and main plot lines, that is a slight problem for me.
I mean, I guess I don't mind it because I just like that sort of thing, but that is a personal preference.
Yeah.
Like I
feel like I've seen it
like,
done better though. Like in Raybear, for example, the main character. I don't know if any of you guys have read it. In Raybear, the main character, like she loses her memory at some point, and she becomes a better person because that trauma and the thing that she's supposed to, the thing she forgets, in turn makes her a better person. It's supposed to be like a deeply traumatic, violent thing that she's supposed to do. But because of her forgetting it magically, like suppressing it, she becomes a better person towards the people that she's supposed to harm. Why, if Kenneth had experienced this trauma and then had it magically removed from his memory, did he continue to be an absolutely terrible fucking person?
Yeah. I feel like there was this one passing reference, if I remember correctly, about like how that affected his ability to feel certain emotions. And maybe that's what we're supposed to think, which like
yes, there was in like the first couple of books.
And like we've been getting, this is the thing too, is like we've been getting his point of view for like so much of this series. And he's never been one of my favorite character points of view. So like,
sorry.
I want Kenneth to rot in the ocean, and I hate that he found peace.
This is actually not a bad point. Like,
so here's what I thought was happening at first. I thought that we were talking about something, because when it starts out, he's talking about how there is a piece of Kenneth's trauma that Kenneth has given to Althea. And I'm thinking it's not just on the physical level of him enacting his trauma upon her, but also like some sort of spiritual, emotional, magical level. And I'm thinking, okay, the ship is going to take that part of Kenneth and remove it because it's making her trauma worse. But then he removes her feelings as well. And I was like, no.
I also hate that he knows he had a son. I wanted him to die thinking he had no legacy. Like, I wanted Kenneth to suffer.
He did. Oh my god. I was happy about this. He did die choking on his own blood. So
Margaret's so bubbly about it.
He got too clean of a death, honestly.
He got a very clean death.
Him and Kyle both was just too neat.
Yeah, like Kyle was just like an afterthought. It's like, oh look, I guess a serpent got him. And like the thing, like I actually found that more satisfying with Kyle because it kind of it pleases me that he was a non-entity. Like he didn't even get a big dramatic death scene. I think that works. I think for Kenneth, we needed something more than this like peaceful at rest with Paragon. I'm like, you can't show us what he did and then be like, oh, and now Paragon is whole. It's like, I'm happy for Paragon, but I hate that Kenneth is there for it.
At least like throw him like Althea got thrown.
What's that, Dutch?
Oh, I just said like at least like chuck him. Like Althea was like thrown between Vivacia. That mental image like killed me of her being just like slung. Like at least throw Kenneth. Like just like give him nicely.
I thought that was like very silly to picture in my head. I'm like, I don't think it's supposed to be that funny looking, but this is hilarious.
Just being yeeted across the ocean between two ships.
That whole like battle thing, it kind of felt like Althea was the flag in Capture the Flag. Like I feel like she could have had a more active part in some of that. I don't know. Like
yes.
Jessica,
I think also Paragon talked about like when he brought him back the second time, I don't think he brought him all the way back.
Well, so that's the thing too, right? Is it's like not only was he taking his trauma, he was also bringing him back to life magically. So like he's kind of he's like undead basically. Like I don't know, like I just think there's a lot of
I don't know. My one thing is that like people, you'll continually see people talking about like people who don't process emotions normally are always demonized and seen as monsters in like in certain contexts, and especially in like true like crime stuff. And that also like that made me deeply uncomfortable, and I just didn't like. it's one of those things that I could have been able to overlook a lot of the issues that I saw with it if I had been satisfied with how my character stories turned out.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I did appreciate what happened with Malta. I don't really give a fuck about Kefria.
See, and that's what I think is interesting is I think by the end of this, Malta was probably my favorite character.
She was the best character by the end of it, which is surprising.
Yeah. Well, and I always found her pretty
her.
interesting throughout, and like she has such an interesting character arc. So
But again, it frustrated me that she kept having to like do all these obeisances to men, and like.
But I mean, like, but I think, but you know, I actually really appreciated that she has this realization that
I did appreciate that.
That like women do that for survival, and they do it intentionally, and that it's not, you know, I don't know, like I thought I kind of liked the way that was handled with her having.
I might give it another half a star because I did like
I think with Malta, that was one of the most successful discussions of like gender in the book, like in the series for me. I think that the way she ended up being handled, even though I would have liked more development in like the middle phase, I feel like she kind of went from like the worst to the best with like very little in the middle. But I did like her a lot at the end, and I like what Robin Hobb was saying about like the reasons that women act like this, and like I do really appreciate that, and I wish that we had seen more of that nuance for some of the other female characters.
I
like
think she tried it with Sarella a little bit because I definitely her actions. I'm saying, going, oh, this is a trauma response.
Yeah.
And like in the second,
yes,
in the second book, Sarella was one of my favorites. Like I thought she was so interesting. I loved seeing how politically smart she was, and then obviously she goes through these like really horrible things, and then in the third book, I kind of felt like I don't know if anyone else felt like this. She felt very different to me, and not like in a trauma response way, but like I think she changed her mind about what she wanted to do with her character. Like I was just waiting for her and Veronica to realize they were on the same side, which I know wouldn't happen right away. But there was a lot of that. Like we're just waiting for them to figure out something that we know for like the whole book.
Right.
I think we kind of saw her swing in a pendulum, because you have to keep in mind that with what is her name? Sarella. Sorry. With Sarella, like she is coming from a culture where women's only power is through men. And so of course she's aligning herself with men that she sees as powerful and can help her get the means that she needs. So to some extent, the fact that she didn't want to, like, especially considering her what is the word? Adversarial nature with the other companions. I see why she didn't want to work with Veronica right away.
Yeah.
The thing with Sarella too is like I don't know. I see why we had some of these discussions, but like it really bugged me when Veronica was kind of like, you can be shaped by the things that happen to you, or you can grow past them. I'm like, she's been like really sexually traumatized and abused, and it kind of irritated me how like after they had one of these big discussions, like suddenly she's not shaking when a man comes in the room. I'm like, it's not. I don't know. It's not that easy.
I don't think she started out shaking when a man comes in the room, though.
I just feel like her responses were very believable, and I wish we had gotten like if we were going to make that a part of the book that we are supposed to pay attention to. I think we maybe should have had more like you said, Margaret. There was kind of like that victim blaming feeling, and then I understand what Veronica is saying is that like sometimes bad things happen, and you have to just do what you have to do anyway. But the way it was done, I didn't love, and I just think that. I don't know. I'm mixed about it because I love that Sarella does get past this and she is able to come into her own and to like start executing some of her decisions and power. But it's like we just kind of skipped over some of it, I think.
I mean, I think there's only so much you can do in a book with so many characters. But I guess my feeling on it was like it was a little harsh, but at the same time, it seemed like what she needed to hear in that moment. You know what I mean?
What she needed to hear, and I don't think it's what Veronica would have said if she had known the full extent of.
Right, and I do know that Veronica doesn't know exactly what happened to her, but I just
it did feel part, though.
I thought to me though, like that was another example between like the female, I guess support between even like Keki and Malta. There's this like understanding between women that I thought was really well done. Like Keki didn't have a lot of respect for Malta, but she still did what she had to do to make sure that Malta would survive. And it felt the same way between, it took me a while to realize this, but even between Ronica and, oh my God, we were just talking about
Sarella.
Sarella, thank you. Brain fart. Even between Ronica and Sarella, there was still this, like, I felt like there was still that, like, female understanding, and, like, we are both in the same boat. Despite our different levels and our backgrounds, we are still in the same boat. And I feel like Hobb does that really well.
That was the difference between Keki and Ronica. Ronica had pity and respect, when we know, because we're in her head.
Yeah. But I feel like it was well done across, like, most of the female friendships and relationships, even between, like, Althea and Amber. Even though, like, they were so different, and Amber was definitely more of, like, the wise one, there was still that, like, female bonding and respect and understanding, and I felt like it was just really well done.
Yeah.
Speaking of Amber.
Okay. I 100% think Amber is the fool.
Yeah.
Amber is the fool.
Carved into the boat.
I hate that I have to think about Fitz in this other series. Like, get him out here.
Well, Fitz is off, doing his thing during this book.
So I sent Kara a text that said, if Amber is who I think she is, either Farseer is not as queer as I thought it was, or it's way more queer than I thought it was.
I would say the second. Yeah, no, Amber is 100% the fool. Well, and it's funny, there's even a line where she's like, I've been called a fool.
Yeah, I'm like, okay.
I don't think she's an elderling anymore, though, because
but now we know what the elderlings are.
Yeah. Thank God, because there was a moment where I'm like, if you tell me they interbred with dragons, I'm gonna flip a table. Like, I can't. I love it.
No, but that was interesting to me, that it's just humans that have the close relationships with dragons, and they have longer lives and physically change. Like, that whole thing is so fascinating.
I assumed that's what the Rainwilder, like, mutation things were. I kept expecting us to, like, so that was,
which it is interesting to me. Oh no, it makes me. It kind of makes me wonder if part of why they were dying young and having more deformities is because they were supposed to develop, but because the dragons weren't hatching.
You want to know my crazy crack theory?
It was like screwing with them. Yeah. What?
Do you want to know my crazy crack theory based on just everything about Tantaglia and the fact that she's like, you humans are puny and your things you want matter not at all. I was like, maybe the elderlings just got tired of being bossed around and they just dragged all the cocoons out of the sunlight. I don't think that's what happened.
I kind of liked her, though.
Still be there, but like, she was really cool for like 30 seconds, and then I was like, can you stop acting like you are the only person in the world that matters, ma'am?
Yeah. I liked when the other characters called her on that, but other than that, I'm like, I can't believe the dragon plotline is so dull. Like, we're just watching her drag Rain around, and I'm like, Rain, like, I feel for you, but you're doing the same thing. Like,
that's true. Well, she was an interesting character and not what people expected, which I actually think is kind of interesting, right? That, like, they have some idea of what a dragon's going to be like, and the dragon is her own person and not,
I think
really
I will
liked her. I really
like
her.
Rainwild better.
I liked her too.
Just because I will not, like, so what I realized is if I had not been so conflicted about Malta's age at the beginning of this relationship, I would have been probably more okay with it, because that would have been my ship.
I know. I would have loved to get excited about it, and yet I couldn't.
So I'm hoping
Robin Hobb took that away from me.
Factor.
Yeah, I think I ended up liking them, and it felt like there was time that a lot of time that passed between everything, and she went through a lot.
Well,
yeah. Yeah, so it's so interesting, like, all the information that we got, and like, oh my gosh, Amber.
Like, I suspected from the beginning when they were we talked about it, like when they were talking about all the same color, I was like,
I told
it's the same thing as the fool, or this is it?
Yeah, that's what I thought from early on too, like, because there was the whole, like, vision the fool had at the end of.
And the way she's talking about, like, I have to do some things for the sake of the world. I'm like, all right,
I'm like,
you have to be at least the same species as
exactly.
And now I need to know what species that is.
Well, don't go on Goodreads. They spoil you in character lists. I found that out the hard way.
Okay.
Jill.
Well, I also think it's interesting because, like, we know Amber isn't her actual name either.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like maybe it's just like kind of like a gender fluid person who's so interesting.
I'm just sitting there like during all of this, I'm like, am I misgendering them? Which one is the correct pronoun?
She's a her in this series, but you know.
Yeah.
Somebody didn't click that Amber was the fool. Oh my gosh.
See, I suspected, and then I heard the face that she was carving into Paragon's face. I was like,
the net earring. I was like, hold a second. Between like the ponytail and the earring.
Oh my gosh. She dropped Malta's gut. Yeah. Yes. That was really funny with Intaglia. Yeah.
Like when she's like, why didn't you say you're welcome? He's like, you dropped me in the middle of a sea battle. I was a little preoccupied.
I'm hoping as she matures, she maybe learns that other people matter. I once heard someone describe the series as about a prophet's journey to introduce
that spoils everything. Yeah.
That's hilarious.
One thing I think is like weird and interesting is like every time the characters talk to each other about like the feminist utopia that is the Six Duchies, and I'm like, I just read those books. No, they're not.
No.
I mean, the women can be in the military, which is a big, obviously.
That does feel
Okay. Is it men who are saying it's a feminist utopia?
No. It's other women who are talking about it, and I'm like, Robin, I just read these. You can't lie. Like, stop it.
It does feel very accurate to how like we talk about Canada. We're like, oh my God, they have socialized medicine.
Yeah.
I just don't know. I'm giving her
medical costs that aren't covered.
Canada's kind of a shithole. Sorry.
I think that's giving her extra credit, but I could see how that might be it.
Like that.
You're right. I was about to say the same thing, Margaret. Actually, it's the way we view like socialist utopias in like Europe as these like amazing countries, but like realistically, they've got their own problems, and I feel like that's the exact vibe I got. Like we always think that the grass is greener somewhere else, but I know
it is in fact greener in Canada, Dasha, just not by much.
Yeah, I would
if you're Indigenous.
From the Hobb experts in the comments, is there a series in this world that women actually do okay? Like, because that's what I thought we were getting with the Liveship books, and then we start and it's like, so Bingtown hates women too now, and I'm like, oh. Because that's something I thought we were going to get, and I talked about it in the first
which again is actually interesting because that is also a thing that has happened historically where women had power and then they industrialized, like, you know, and like, so
I think part of it is just the way I always heard people talk about these books was they were very feminist and like I mean
they are feminist, but the world isn't feminist.
I feel like,
you know what I mean? Like they're especially for the time they were written, like they're exploring, like, because you got to think like this was all like way pre-Me Too movement, and the way that she was dealing with like pushing back on like victim blaming and like dealing with sexual, like all of this is pretty revolutionary, honestly, for the time that it was being.
There weren't a lot of people doing that at that point.
Yeah, I think this is another case of like, if I hadn't been expecting a lot better, I would have probably been pleasantly surprised, because I wasn't going into this like a fantasy series written in the 90s. I was thinking like people just rave about her books.
Yeah, it's a fantasy series written in the 90s.
Yeah.
Women get as many chances as men to have Hobb interfere with their lives.
Equal opportunity author fuckery.
Yeah.
I'm reading the Witcher series right now, and it's just like the difference for being written at around the same time. I'm like, I'll take Hobbs Woman any day. I love the Witcher series. I have like a strong attachment to it because of the video games. But Jesus Christ, everyone is like skinny and big titties, and I'm like, thank God there's at least some kind of substance to the women in Hobbs books.
One of my favorite moments of reading books with my brother is when we were reading the Jim Butcher books, and he was like, no, he does a really good job with the women. And I was like, BJ.
He does not.
Baby.
Like his
all of the women except for the main love interest are described as wet dreams every time they are introduced. That's Like, I think he does some interesting things with his female characters, but
they're not good.
No.
I mean, like I've read a couple of them and like they're entertaining, but the women are not done well.
Yeah, he gets better as you get into late, like once you get past like to like 6 or 7, and I understand people don't want to switch around, but like, oh my god, what is her name? The detective. Someone help. But the main, like the love interest, supposedly, like I did like how he, like it's one of those things that like she's the I'm not like other girls kind of character almost, and then you have all of the other ones. And so I liked how he was handling her, so I was okay with it.
Yeah, I think with the 2 series I've read from Robin Hobb so far, there's like 2 or 3 female characters that it's like I would die for them. I love them. They're perfect. And then everyone else, I'm like, I'm conflicted now about if you are actually doing feminism. Like I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think having nuance to women is part of it, though. You know,
it's not that like she has to make every female character likable. It's more like generally when I read a book, I feel like you can get kind of an overall feeling for how the author views gender, how they're handling it. And with Robin Hobb, I just have very mixed feelings. Like if I were judging on like Patience and Ketrican and like some of those characters, I'd be like, yes. I love
you, Murphy.
But if I look at like Molly and even some things about Althea and like the way that I don't know, I just come to very different conclusions, I guess, depending on.
Hold on, I want to know. Hold on, I need to just look up how old Robin Hobb is.
She's old. I mean, she's older.
She's 70. She has the same gender ideas as my mother, except slightly less conservative. So I'm also conflicted about my mother's. Like we just had an argument about abuse, and this woman who has told me in rather detail about being abused by 2 husbands looked me in the eyes and said, well, if it was so bad, why didn't she leave? And I was just like, Mom. Like, and genuinely thought that her case was very different. I mean, it was very different, but like completely separated. So like, but she also has gender ideas that are very different from like what I learned growing up in the church. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think, so I think it's interesting. Like, I mean, part of it is like the timing. I do think they're really.
I don't know, Derry. Did you rage quit the Harry Dresden series because they killed off your favorite character? I'm still waiting for my brother to tell me that he undoes it because he could, and that it will be because that will literally ruin the series for me. So I just haven't read that book.
That's so funny. Nikki, I do want to keep going with these at some point. I'm just not sure exactly when that's going to happen. Just because I have a lot of things on my plate at the moment, but.
It's going to depend on how I feel about the ending of Assassin's Quest, although the bar is on the floor right now. So
I mean, I'm a Hobb stan. Even though I don't like this, I'm just gonna keep reading everything.
Listen, you know what? I just kind of think she's brilliant. I love her. I love her
character, like her character work, because when she does it really well, she does it really well.
Yeah.
I've never
even when I hate what she's doing, I still feel like, man, but you're observing humanity so well. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
it's too close to home.
Yeah.
I just hate him so much.
Yes, go check out Derry's channel if you need more Realm of the Elderlings. Yeah, I do like I have the first book physically and like all the audiobooks of the next trilogy. So like I plan to keep going. Yeah. It's just a matter of like when I can fit that into my
I am relieved that none of the books are this long. Like none of the other ones, as far as I know. But
I think the whole Rainwild Chronicles is like they're 4 books, but they're all super short.
That's the one that like I've always felt I have the best chance of loving, and now I'm a little afraid. Like, because what if I don't?
I've heard that one's the more. I've heard that one's the most YA one in terms of like how juvenile the characters act.
Interesting.
Okay.
That's what I heard. I don't know if it's true. I haven't gotten there yet. Obviously, like this is my first time reading through the Realm of the Elderlings, but I've heard that compared to like the 5th series and how adult the Liveship Traders are, I heard that the Rainwild Chronicles are just very juvenile. The characters seem to like all be very just like, I want to bang this person. No, I want to bang this person. And it's just like very not focused on the plot. But like, I might be wrong. Who is it that's doing the read along? I think it was Becca and the Books and like that whole British gang.
Mm-hmm.
I think their whole crew is doing like a read along for the whole realm of the Otherlings, and they were all like not feeling the Rainwild Chronicles.
Interesting.
I wonder.
So I think this is an interesting question. I guess like I can see how for people who I know my personal preferences with reading her books are that I read them quickly and I don't know. So like this is what it would look like is if the people in general were like, hey, we want 2 months per book, we could do that and I'd still read it like 2 weeks before the live show. Like you know what I mean?
I don't like lingering in them. I don't like lingering in them either.
Yeah.
For me, what I like, so the length of the book doesn't necessarily matter to me as a person, like when I'm reading stuff, because I went through the Way of Kings like that. Like, because I was invested, I find that because of how frustrating and stressful Robin Hobb's books, like I've had to take a break from Assassin's Quest because I cannot deal with Regal anymore at this point in my life. Oh no, we're past that. We're at the surprise plot twist that everyone knew was coming in the middle.
Is it when the first 400 pages don't matter? Is it that plot twist?
No, it's a plot twist about Molly.
Oh my God! The fact that Fitz he is the dumbest. Like he doesn't deserve to be happy. That's how like it's coming for you.
Like I need more time with these books. Like I've been reading Assassin's Quest for like 2 months at this point.
Like see, I can't do that though because I just like I read so many books, like I'll lose the plot thread. I have to read them like to like all of like I can't do that. So
I'm gonna lose like interest.
I did read straight through because it was a priority, whereas with Assassin's Quest, other books keep coming up that I need to read instead.
Yeah.
Dasha, you said the people who read the Rainwilder ones didn't like them. Are they mostly people who like YA less in general, like on principle, or because that also affects how I tend to
No, because it's a large group that's doing that read along, and they tend to sometimes like read and enjoy YA. In general, they obviously enjoy adult a little bit more, but from what I can recall, like most of that group still reads like some of the more popular YA fantasy series, and they quite enjoy them. I think like across the group for reference, like most of them like the Mistborn series, which has like crossover appeal.
Definitely crossover.
And they definitely enjoyed the Fitz storyline as well as the Liveship Traders. Like they've been enjoying the series so far. I don't think any of them have a problem with YA. They just felt like it felt too juvenile considering what Robin Hobb can do, I think was their main critique.
That's interesting. I mean, I guess that's interesting though, right? Because like there are people who do that. I mean, like a lot of authors have certain series that are YA. I mean, like Terry Pratchett, one of his Discworld series is YA.
Yeah, which is fantastic. If it's the Tiffany Aching one, that's the only one I've read so far.
I think We Free Men is
that one.
Yeah,
it's like middle grade YA, like
yeah. So like I just think it's interesting. People being like, you could do adult, so why are you doing that? You know what I mean? Like that just feels so like elitist to me.
And especially because like there's no like trope that is like a YA or an adult trope. Like the one that gets me is like unnecessary romance subplots, and I'm like, have you ever read a book written by a man? Like,
did you see
I'm just saying
about YA being the worst genre? And I was like,
oh no, I see. This is. I got to take a step back, Margaret. Like, I am gonna lose it if somebody calls that a genre one more time.
So this is interesting. So Jerry says Rainwild has very young main characters. There's a lot of YA tropey stuff in the first 2 books, and then it falls back to standard Hobb for the last 2. But Rainwild should have been 2 books. Which is interesting.
So I wonder if part of the reason the Rainwild books are shorter is because publishing has changed. I don't know when the Rainwilds came out, but like when Robin Hobb is writing, having these really big, long books was really popular, and they have gotten less popular as you go. So,
Renee, I would read a summary. Like,
you could probably skip straight to it, but like it wouldn't make a lot of sense.
Like there's like some connections that I got, but I don't know. I mean,
I feel like my Liveship Traders experience was enriched by having read the Fitz series, but I don't feel like not reading it would take away from my experience.
I feel like Fitz has never enriched anything for me. So. He's not bad in book 2. I like him in book 2.
Yeah.
Okay, but like the other parts, like the things we got towards the end that like we started to get about the Elderlings and a lot of the side characters, like I feel like the knowledge of the world enriched the Liveship Traders series, but not having it would not have taken away from my enjoyment.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Especially because one of the big things I feel like that you get is the hints that the serpents are the dragons, and I'm like, I feel like that's pretty clear even without the first series. Like we had seen dragons in the first series, which I think made it even less unexpected that they are the serpents, but I don't feel like that's like justifying the whole series.
No, yeah, I think this is also true. Absolutely, that there are people who want to write something their kids can read.
Hold on, let me see. I do want to see, because I know that like book links get affected by like paper shortages occasionally too. When was Rain Wilds published?
It's got to be like late 2000s, early 2010s.
June 2009. Yeah. So yeah, that is definitely
we're in the 2000s. Okay, good.
Well, so it makes me. I mean,
published in 2000, I think.
Yeah.
This one was 2000, I think too.
I do. That's this one. This one was published in 2000. I do believe, because I did look it up because I was curious.
You're right.
Yeah, that's interesting. So. Which like 2009, 2010. I mean, like what was like? I mean, like the big things were like Twilight and Hunger Games.
2009 was around the big YA boom, so it makes sense that she might have been like, "Oh, okay." I mean, she might have even
like her editors might have been like, "Let's try to corner a little bit of that market," because it was that was when like all of that was. Because some of this
they were still published as adult, right?
I believe so.
Yeah, but sometimes they'll publish stuff and try to market it both ways. So like Mistborn is adult, but they also market it to YA, for instance. Like so sometimes they'll do
Mistborn is an example of a series that is super fucking sad, and yet I was satisfied at the end.
Right. Yeah. It can be
I've heard the ending is insane. Like everyone's satisfied.
It's one of those things that I was ready to set the book on fire, and there's one little twist at the end. I was like, oh my god, you're so brilliant, I can't be mad anymore.
Yeah,
I love this. Paper shortage, time to cut some wizard wood.
Yeah, definitely not any consequences for that decision.
No, we'll have some sentient books we're reading. That'll be fun.
Like the kind of theory that some of the live ships were actually made from dead dragons, and so that's why they didn't have the memories. That was an interesting thing.
I like that Ophelia was the same. She was a fun character, and I'm glad that
I loved Ophelia.
I was worried about her too. Like I was like, one of these ships is going to go down in a blaze of glory, and I don't want it to be the two that I care about.
Who did go down in a blaze of glory? I don't know if they did.
That was just my assumption, because I assume Robin Hobb's going to kill everyone.
That's how I used to enter George R. Martin books, and then I stopped the series.
Yeah,
because he hasn't.
I do think it's interesting. Like I think because Robin Hobb has some really beloved characters, people like the way people talk about her books is as if they're really like escapist, but they're actually not. Like they are more like George R. Martin or Joe Abercrombie, but like a little more escapist, maybe. Like more magic. Like I don't know, you know what I mean? Like I think they're yeah.
It's funny because I don't consider like blood and gore something that makes it inappropriate for age ranges or like makes it dark, in my opinion, because I wouldn't like. I saw somebody describe Assassins in Prison as grimdark, and I was just like, this feels like a run of the mill normal. Am I just used to really dark fantasy?
Maybe.
I would consider grimdark personally. I feel like there's always the assumption that if I've heard a lot of female authors talk about how like because they are female authors, they're not taken as grimdark, or Fong, for example. And I would consider Hobb definitely grimdark in my opinion, because it's grimdark. So gritty.
Yeah. Well, and also I think that's the thing is like grimdark is that it's not the typical hero's journey. It's not where there's a hero and there's a good and positive ending and the heroes win the day and the bad guys. Like that is like grimdark doesn't assume any of that. And like, I think I would agree. I would call Robin Hobb grimdark, but friendly. This is exactly, that is, yes.
I think I would feel even more grimdark if I like, I don't know, if I hadn't like turned off my feelings for these books. Essentially,
I don't feel like they're gritty though. Like this felt like on par with like Brandon Sanderson in my mind. Versus
Sanderson does not get this gritty. Like his characters aren't real enough to get this gritty.
They're very much archetypes.
Fine. They're archetypes, yeah. Like his characters are fine, but they're not
very archetypal characters.
Very
though,
archetypal.
Yeah. I feel like Robin Hobb does though. To me, have like very like patterned characters, which is not in itself a bad thing. I just like, I don't know, the way people talk about like how no one ever wrote a character before Robin Hobb was born is like a little much.
Yeah. Pastel grimdark. Perfect.
To be fair, I feel like part of my love for Robin Hobb is because I was a huge reader as a kid, but I only got back into reading in 2019. So for me, getting into this series is like, holy shit, I've never read anything like this. But I also have like, I've never read like Lord of the Rings. I've never read like a lot of the lauded. I haven't read like the Stormlight Archive. A lot of the like current popular. I've never read Joe Abercrombie. So for me, like Robin Hobb is like, for now, this is the benchmark for me. And it's like, maybe I might be wrong. I might change my mind. But for me, for now, this is truly the best character work that I've ever seen. So like, yeah, Gara, like I know it's super obnoxious, but like, has no one wrote characters before Robin Hobb and George R. R. Martin for me? No, because I'm not used to this.
Yeah. Well, and I will say this, like Joe Abercrombie does amazing character work also.
I'm so excited to read him.
Yeah, he's really good. He just has a very different his books are just like a lot more action heavy, which is why they're not my favorites. I love his character work. But it's low, it's like he does like low magic worlds, which I like the magic. So like I like Robin Hobb because she does like less action battle types, like some, but not less action, more character and plotting and world building and higher magic, whereas Joe Abercrombie is like higher on the action, low magic, but amazing character work and interesting sort of ideas and stuff. So, but I do, so I would say this, like, I don't know that grimdark is necessarily lack of hope, because I also think people like think of Abercrombie as like, oh my gosh, it's going to be like the darkest thing, but they're actually sometimes really funny. Like there's great characters, like there's a lot of like darker humor. They're like, they can be fun at times. They just don't, it's just not like the good guys win the day at the end. And I don't know, like, it's interesting.
I mean, Tolkien is just basically the typical hero's journey. Like he is not the first, he's probably the most famous from that period to have written that book, but he is still very much in a specific formula. And I think there are people who do that formula well, and there are people who are very obviously trying to copy Tolkien. Like they're not trying to do the formula, they're trying to do Tolkien. Like, honey, you can't.
Yeah.
Okay, Kara, for example, like who would you consider to be doing some of the best character work as compared to
in fantasy
for you? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Not to put you on the spot. I'm genuinely curious.
I think Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik is a fantastic example, and also of a really like what I like to see in like feminist fantasy. I think she's a good example. Look at my favorite shelf over here.
I'm just sitting. I can't remember any of the fantasies that I have ever read in my life right now.
That's it. The Marisi books by Maria Turchaninov are really fantastic, and that's an interesting series because every book in the series is a different age category, which I think is fascinating.
What's the series name? Sorry, I missed it.
Marisi. They're translated. I can put it in the comments actually.
I'm going to Google Goodreads it immediately.
Because like the first book is kind of like bridges middle grade and young adult. The second book is adult, definitely. It's like a prequel, and if people need to skip that one, they can because it is brutal. And then the last one is kind of adult or YA. So I think it's really.
Jennifer, I was just about to say this. Sword of Kaigan has excellent character work. I just read it this last month, and it's so good.
I need to read that.
Yeah.
See, I've read Spinning Silver and I didn't love it.
It's like a very particular, reading this series is
flavor.
And like reading these books is making me think about like how
Thank you.
This is probably obvious. Yeah, they're really good. I really enjoyed them. This is probably like a very obvious thing, but it's like even things that I'm used to thinking of as being more objective are not, like, because what I consider good character development is not what Hobb does. But that doesn't mean, like, I think the like way she signals her characters I find very heavy-handed, but I know not everybody does. And this is a good reminder that, like, I need to not assume that, that there's like objective good character work, but I don't think she's some of the best, but I see why people do.
I'm with you though, like Naomi Novik's characters in Spinning Silver were probably my favorite part because they were some of the most fascinating
the plot was kind of convoluted. Like, and the plot was a little convoluted, but I loved the characters too.
There was a lava monster at some point.
The fact that like one of the inciting incidents is like these two women. It's like, what if we just like killed each other's husbands? And they're like, wait.
I think Naomi Novik is just like hit and miss for me. Like sometimes I really love her books, and sometimes I'm like,
Yeah, I have no interest in that Dark Academia series. I'm holding out for her standalone.
I don't think you would like it.
Yeah.
I liked it the first one okay, but I don't think you would like it. Yeah, no, Sword of Kaigen is excellent though. And it's like you have to be in like a good headspace because it does also deal with some darker stuff, but it's more hopeful. Kara, I think you would actually probably like Sword of Kaigen.
I put it on my list. Like I put all three of those books on my list after you reviewed them. I'm like, these all sound good.
Yeah. Yeah. That is true.
Yeah.
No, I think it's definitely interesting.
Is that an Anne McCaffrey book, Renee?
I've read one book by her. Yeah, it sounds like it is.
Okay.
I read the first book of the one series, I think Dragon Quest.
You know who else does amazing character work and amazing everything? Is N.K. Jemisin.
This is true. Yes. Yes. That's one of my other answers. I think she's one of the best.
She's untouchable.
Yeah. Like
her books are so smart, I can't listen to them on audiobook.
I don't understand how people do complicated fantasy on audiobook at all. You guys are too powerful.
Honestly.
I can't
absorb anything.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to, like, I think for some of it depends on what it is. Like, some of it I can just listen to, and some of it I have to, like, partly read physically.
There has to be a certain willingness to be okay if you skip, if you miss for, like,
and I'm not.
Me neither.
My OCD will not let me.
I go back and re-listen. So, if I miss something, I'll just, like, rewind and re-listen.
Yeah. Like, there's a certain level of missing that I am okay with. And there's a certain level where I will rewind. Trying to read the 5th or listen to the 5th season as an audiobook, especially with the perspective stuff, I kept rewinding because my brain was not physically, like, mentally comprehending what was going on.
Yeah. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it on audio until my reread. I did an audio for a reread, and that was good. But like for my first read, I didn't.
I feel like if I had read the first few chapters physically with my eyeballs and then listen to the rest of it, I could have. But it was the world building and stuff and everything.
It's a lot. Like you do. It's yes.
And I don't get confused easily. So.
Yeah. No, that one is a lot.
Because most of the stuff, I'm like, if I don't understand it now, I'll figure it out later.
Yeah, no, her books are definitely like, well, those ones in particular, the Broken Earth trilogy.
I am too pea-brained for that series. I could not do it.
You could totally do it. If you can read this, you could totally read it.
Struggled. I read the 5th season twice, and I felt like I was still missing something. I don't know. I might come back to it because
you just have to read the whole trilogy. Honestly, I mean, like, I know that sounds, but I'm just saying, like, there's, like, if there are things you're missing, like, they will probably be unveiled as you go in the series.
That's fair. Because, I felt like I missed a lot of it, because I started the second book, and I was like, did I somehow forget everything I just read?
No, she starts you in a weird place.
Okay. Oh my God. I literally thought I lost.
I've had books that do that. It's so confusing.
No, you're good.
Oh my God. Because I've gone to some of her other, like, I know that the Dreamblood duology is like less popular, but I love that one because I'm like, this makes sense.
I'm excited for that one.
I need to finish it. I read the first one and it's excellent.
I like cried and I laughed. And I was like, this for me, like everyone has that moment with the 5th season in that series. For me, it was Dreamblood. I'm like, holy shit, this is like some of the best writing.
The first book I read from her was The 100,000 Kingdoms, and I'm like, oh my god, this is what people are talking about with N.K. Jemisin. Like,
that one's really good, and they're all so different.
Book sold me.
The thing that got me with
so
5th
talented.
season was I was like 50 pages in before I even realized that one of the points of view was in second person because I was that sucked in. I was just like, what's going on?
Yeah.
When I don't notice a point of view choice that I don't like, that's when you know it's good. It's like I don't like first person present tense, and if a book makes me not notice that, it's usually very good.
Mm-hmm. Listen, this is exactly it. You still have a lot of questions at the end of the first book, but the trilogy is very satisfying, and a reread of the trilogy is even more satisfying because you pick up because here's the thing that's amazing about about the 5th season. She tells you everything from the very beginning. It's all there. You just don't know enough to understand it. So when you reread it, you're like, oh my God, you were literally telling me everything from the very beginning. I just didn't see it. It's like, it is masterful.
I might have to go back to it, I guess. Because I want to feel what everyone else feels, but I just I felt so stupid.
Yeah, I think just go with it. Well, and if you're interested, I mean, I don't know if you want, we did a read along, so there are live shows with discussions for all the books. So.
I don't mind having a lot of questions at the end of the first book if I know enough to be excited about them getting answered, you know, like if there's other stuff that's working for me, I don't mind being like, I guess I'll understand this eventually.
Yeah.
It was just starting the second one when I felt like I was still in the woods and I was like, this like maybe it was just the wrong time for me because I know a lot of the times for fantasy, if you're not in the right headspace for certain books, you don't enjoy them.
Yeah.
So I might come back to, especially now that you guys are like,
it's good. Well, and because the thing is too, is starting in book 2, you get some new perspectives and new timelines. So it does get it expands what you know. You get some past timeline of things from far distant past, which is interesting.
Oh, okay.
So, and then the other thing about it is that starting in book 2, it starts becoming more of a sci-fi blend, not just purely fantasy.
There we go. That's where we get this. Because I was sitting there reading it, like, why is this sci-fi? This is fantasy.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, so it reads like magic because there's much that has been forgotten about the world.
Okay, one of those.
Which I mean, it's absolutely you're able to do like a sci-fi setup as a fantasy series. Because I have one that I've started reading where the entire way they got to the planet they're on is they came in a spaceship and everything is magic. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know. I like the sci fantasy where it's technically we're on another planet, but everything else is fantasy. Cool, well, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah, so this is not that. This is there's a scientific basis to most things that feel like magic.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But it's fun.
That makes loads. Okay. Yeah. I'm gonna furiously take notes. I wish I hadn't sold my copies a few months ago.
I've done that before, where I unhaul something and then later I'm like, foolish.
That's what the library's for. And I will rebuy them. I will support her because I think she's doing things that nobody else are. I'm feeling a little bit better about my abilities now.
Like our next Octavia Butler, you know? I feel like her stuff is gonna be classics.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
Also, okay, last year the release she had was a graphic novel. Best graphic novel I have ever read. Who knew they could be that good?
Derry's bringing it back to the live ships.
Okay, Derry.
I feel
keep
bad
us on track. I can go on about N.K. Jemisin because she is my favorite, and I'm an N.K. Jemisin stan. But we can talk about Robin Hobb also.
I guess.
I really did like Paragon's story.
My thoughts on Paragon. I love my boy, and he deserved better than Kenneth, as did everyone in the world.
Yeah.
Honestly, I love Paragon too.
So at what point did you figure out Like, my mind was kind of blown when I finally figured out who Kenneth was, because I did think that he was on that ship. I think I said it in the last live show that he was on the pirate ship, and that's why he freaked out and killed that guy.
Me too.
Which was true, but I didn't realize that it's because he was, like, part of the Blood family.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize he was a Ludlow. Not at all.
Yeah. That was...
Yeah, I loved seeing, Derry like rehash, because I don't know if you guys heard, but like Mother and Paragon, and her bringing the logbooks back and giving him his memories.
Mm-hmm.
I wish she had a freaking tongue, because I feel like that woman had some stories to tell.
Yeah.
I do have an issue with the fact that he has Kenneth's eyes.
You know what bothers me more is that he has Kenneth's soul inside with the dragon. It's like Paragon's like, I'm at peace and complete now, and I'm like, I would be happy for you, but I want Kenneth rotting at the bottom of the ocean. Thank you.
This is true, which
I mean, he
honestly
is riding at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah. Like, I had suspected something like this, that he was Igrath's ship from like a while ago.
Yeah.
I just didn't, and that Kenneth was on it, but the blood thing is like what I didn't guess. So
because the Liveship Traders are such a closed society.
No, Nikki, I could low-key have one on is it Octavia or
Ophelia?
Ophelia, thank you. I was like,
she's great.
Name. I love Ophelia.
She's great.
She's amazing. I want her as a friend. I feel like because the Bingtown society is so closed, I feel like it made sense that it was so hidden that the Ludlucks had like a relationship with like someone from the Pirate Isles.
Mm-hmm.
And like Priscilla's saying, like it really makes sense. It doesn't feel like a twist to outsmart. Okay, I don't know if anyone's seen this. There was this 3-part series that someone did recapping all of Pretty Little Liars. It's popped up on my.
I heard of it.
Okay,
it's legendary.
I watched the whole thing, and I was like, but the point that he made was that the show could have made sense if the show writers hadn't tried to outsmart the Watcher. And that's what I felt like made a lot of sense with Kenneth's character, because it was a twist.
Right.
But it didn't feel far-fetched or unreasonable.
It was like there, like the pieces were there if you had thought to put it together or something.
And like all of us were close clearly, because we realized like Igra and Paragon, there was some kind of, Kenneth wanted a live ship, and it wasn't just because he wanted it for power. There was some connection, and I love how we got from point A to point B.
Yeah.
It all made so much sense.
Yeah. Well, it also explained a lot to me about his relationship with Etta, and like why he was so emotionally like closed off with her. And also going back to like the weirdness of like when we hear about what their relationship was like in earlier books when she was still like working as a prostitute, that all makes so much more sense, because he was like, I'm never going to love anybody again. Like this is like a transaction. I don't know. It was interesting. Mm-hmm. But
I feel like Kenneth, speaking of Derry's comment, I feel like Kenneth had been his own, separate from Paragon long enough that he was his own person.
He's responsible for his actions.
Yeah. Responsible for his actions. Again, that gets into slightly scary stuff where you're talking about people who have process emotions differently. Like that might just be because I have a lot of friends who have conditions that people like will talk about, you're a robot, and like use that to disparage them. But like that I didn't know Wizardwood could do that. Do they say that at this point?
By the way, it poisons you.
I mean, why not?
Yeah, that was my big issue too, Priscilla, is I don't like that we get that fantasy reason for it, because we didn't need that. Like, I think his arc, such as it was, would have still made sense if we didn't have that. And so I'm like, the fact that Robin Hobb is specifically telling us this, it's like, it would only, like, the only reason she would tell us this is if it was supposed to change how we thought of him. And I guess
I just didn't, I didn't think that was what it was doing. Like, I can see why it could be read that way, but like to me it read like Kenneth was still making, because we saw him in moments where he made choices to do things, because before that, like, he had some issues, but like he had never done anything predatory in that way, and he chose to like give into that and do what he, like assault Althea, and he didn't have to do that. And so like, I don't know, I think we were in his head enough that like we saw him make decisions. It wasn't like he was just always like that, or like it was a foregone conclusion. I don't know. Yeah.
But he was whole enough that we can hold him responsible for what he does. And that's what I'm
See,
is.
I think that this would have been this makes sense to me more as a trauma response than it does as some magical, like, oh, he's missing part of his emotions.
Not his fault. He had them removed. Yeah.
Right.
I think that is a choice that I don't agree with, and I think is harmful to people who, number one, have conditions like that, and number two, to victims.
I can see that.
The fact that it's a key point for the whole series, I think, kind of makes it worse. I just don't like that choice that she had to like fantasize, whatever that word would be.
And I think it was more about Paragon becoming whole, because Paragon put some of himself in Kennit, than it was about Kennit becoming whole at the end and being
right. I agree.
I do think that it was kind of silly to put that in there, because it was like I know that it probably links, considering what happens with Althea, it probably links to later chapters. I didn't like, it felt like it would like, it felt too much.
Should have gotten ripped apart by sea serpents.
I second that motion.
Yeah.
And without hearing about his son, well, he's assuming it's going to be a son. We don't know.
It's going to be a girl, because didn't y'all remember the charm talking and it referred to her as a her?
Oh, I'm
going to trust the wizard would charm more than I'm going to trust a society that wants the child to be a boy.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
I wanted more from the charm. It felt like it was just helping him out of sticky situations with like Edda and other people, but I feel like we could have had the charm like hold him accountable more, or at least like
we get all those we get all those instances where it seems like the charm is going to turn against him and start working against him, and I'm like, yes, and then
why didn't the charm back Althea up? That was so annoying.
That would have been so smart,
especially after threatening that he was going to do that. Like, I don't understand why you would have him threaten to do that if that something happened to Althea, and then not have the charm do that
in his own voice, in Kenneth's own voice. Can you imagine the waves that would send across the ship and like all the characters? If the charm would call Kenneth out in his own voice with his own face. I feel like that would be such a good personalization of his character.
See, this is interesting. Do you guys all remember this?
Yeah.
Because that is true. Like, because that was part of what gave life to them.
Is that a spoiler for Assassin's Quest though? For Margaret?
It's not a very important one.
That's fine. I already know that the dragons come back. I know a lot of what's happened based on what I have pieced together from Kara being mad about it. And other stuff. Here's my thing: that doesn't make that particular plot point any less harmful or problematic in my mind.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not it's built into the plot. That again, like Kara said, it makes it worse for me. I would have preferred to just have it be something that like, this is how some people respond to trauma, because I think that was already set up. We didn't need further. So
and there are things around that like, even aside from how different people want that handling of assault and gaslighting to go, there are things around it that like just straight up feel like plot holes to me. Like the fact that Vivacia is like, I don't need to look inside Kenneth's heart to know that he didn't do this. I'm like, it would be so easy. And I know we've seen that Vivacia has been like sold on Kenneth already, but that was just an example of something where like, this is only happening so that Robin Hobb can like heap more awfulness and trauma on this thing that has happened to Althea. To me, that's what it is.
I guess to me it read like the fact, like exploring the fact, which I think, I guess this is the thing, is all of that to me read like an intentional, like wanting to explore the way that sexual assault is dealt with in the real world and the way that people around it respond to it. And I think Vivacia's response, because remember, right, it's the equivalent of if Kenneth was like a boyfriend or like a love interest almost, who somebody accuses them and they're like, well, I don't want to believe that. I'm not going to look at the the thing that would make me think that's true, because that hurts me because I have feelings for them. Like, and so I guess to me that was what that piece of it was doing, was paralleling.
I think it wouldn't have bothered me so much if I didn't feel like the tone that Hobb was writing in didn't match what the characters had done to Althea. Like with Wintro and with Vivacia, they get their happy ending. And I feel like, at least to me, it read like we're supposed to be, I don't know about happy for them, but like to understand, and like, you know, Vivacia has made peace with this, and Wintro's like, I only believed you because Etta believed you. And it's like, I don't feel like, I'm not asking for them to get justice, or because we know that's not going to happen, but it just could have been done. It just could have been done in a way that I think didn't send very mixed messages about these characters that she doesn't usually, like, I feel like she's usually very clear about what you're supposed to feel about characters. And to me, it felt like Wintro and Vivacia were still supposed to be on board for them, and they lost me at that point. I mean, Vivacia kind of lost me when she was on Team Kennett anyway, but...
It's interesting because I guess I just didn't feel that. Like, I didn't think that we were supposed to be okay with any of that. But
I read it more as like Wintro. Not only did Wintro not speak up because he had all these conflicting feelings about Kenneth, but also because the whole crew only saw one side of Kenneth, and that was the good side. Etta and Wintro saw multiple sides, and they were willfully kind of blind. But it's kind of like in real life, if a public figure speaks out against another public figure for something serious like sexual assault, all the fans will immediately take the side of someone that they idolize.
That is true.
And it felt very similar. Kenneth is this like mythical creature in a lot of people's minds. The people that know him closely have different reasons for protecting him, or at least ignoring those sides. But if they spoke out, even if they know that is the right thing to do, they would be completely vilified because there's this overwhelming number of people that still support him. And it did feel, I know like people are saying like we don't read fantasy for realism, but it felt so like real in the sense that if you do speak out about someone that has a large group of supporters, you will be vilified instead of the person that committed the literal crime.
I guess I just want like realism isn't enough for me. Like I think you have to I feel like you have to like write it thoughtfully on top of that.
Yeah, I guess I just don't feel that way. Like for me, writing it in realism in this way helps to reflect back at us the way the world exists. To me, it feels intentional into trying to get people to see what it actually is. You know what I mean? Like, because I think sometimes when we see reality reflected back, we can be like, oh, that's messed up. Like, you know what I mean? So to me, that's like the experience that I had with this. Yeah, I mean, it's not pretty, but this I think is also true. Jessica, you're right. Vivacia never wanted to hear anything bad about Kenneth all along. I mean, that's accurate.
Yeah,
like,
he was the one that got rid of Kyle.
I'm like, why did you even have to tell me that she's not going to look? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, just don't bring it up and I won't be annoyed about it. Like, because that's what people do. People are like, I don't want to see it. I mean, people do that. You know what I mean? Like, people like don't want to look. I would have assumed Vivacia would side with Kenneth anyway, and this is just an example of Robin Hobb giving me extra reasons to be mad that I didn't ask.
But Vivacia feels like Etta that Kenneth rescued them from a life of servitude. So they feel this like obligation to him, which I found really, really interesting because it's like, when does your appreciation for this person end and someone else's suffering begin? And like, you got rescued, but this person is still suffering. And like, it's frustrating, but it felt so viscerally real. I love it.
I'm not saying that like it's realistic and I'm mad about that. I don't know. I'm not explaining this very well. It's like I've read other things that like have this really depressing realism, and I think they were handled really well and really thoughtfully. And I think also I wouldn't have been as frustrated with this one if I feel like other aspects of the same issue weren't handled like this. Like, I do appreciate that we finally get a reference to the fact that Althea's first assault was in fact assault, and she realizes that, and I'm glad that we got that, even though it was like a couple of books later.
And so I just think it was interesting because it was like she had personally turned away from it being assault partly because of what Kefria said.
Yes. So some of it I think like was handled well, and I just wish like more of it had been for me. Maybe.
Yeah.
For you, yeah.
That's
I
true.
think this is interesting also that yes, Vivacia seemed to have PTSD from her quickening and was an easy target. And that is that this is what I was gonna say is there's a conversation to be had about underage grooming, that is what it feels like of Kennit kind of grooming Vivacia throughout
Mhm.
the series. And that's
It's funny because she has 3 whole ass adults in her memories.
Plus a dragon.
Plus a dragon.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have Paragon, who has a traumatized child as one of his people.
Mm-hmm.
2 of his people.
I mean, they both got issues.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that I just, maybe my main takeaway should be that Vivacia doesn't deserve Althea anymore because she did not believe her.
No,
I mean, honestly, that was kind of
That was just
like Vivacia and Wintro could both have gotten taken out by a sea serpent, and I'd be like,
because I was really expecting Vivacia to be an ally when Althea finally got out because she.
I never was because she didn't want to be. She didn't want to hear any. She was on Team Kennit. She didn't want to hear anything bad about him.
But I think that's what made Althea and Vivacia not get together at the end a bit more satisfying, because it's like that was the nail in the coffin of their relationship. It's like you literally can't even stand by me. You know something happened because it happened inside you. It's like, okay, I guess I don't need you either. I don't like that it was replaced by a man and a male ship, but it at least felt like these are people who trust me, who believe me, who deserve me.
A male ship that has the eyes of her abuser. That is
that's the thing where I wonder, like, I've just wondered, like, where do they go from here after this book? Because I do wonder a bit about that, about her staying on Paragon when Paragon has her abuser in, like, that is like,
but he magically took away her trauma, so it's okay now.
See, that's why I don't like that, is that like magically deals with that, and that's why that's my one major issue with the book, honestly.
And that's part of what bothers me, because at some point this Ludluck child that's coming is going to want his family ship back, and then where does that leave Althea again without a live ship? And I'm just like,
that's what I never thought of that.
Yeah.
No, that was my thing. I was like, this is set up so perfectly because they can literally just swap ships. Edda can be the captain of this other one, which I was really like, that was an exciting premise, like idea for me. And then Vivacia and Althea get to like figure out how to go forward. But anyways.
Right. Well, yes, Nikki, that's why I don't really like that as an ending. And I low-key hope in later series we find out that like she ends up doing something different, because I don't love.
Yeah, again, Priscilla, it's not made clear. It just feels like things that happened versus specific plot moments, because it's happening among so much else.
And I feel like that one of the things that makes that frustrating is that she's very detail oriented in a lot of other parts of the writing. And so when she doesn't give you this detail, it feels like she's intentionally skipping over it.
You know way too much about the serpents.
Oh my God. So much about serpents. So much about serpents. It's like, I understand how your venom works. Please stop.
Oh my God. The worst part was, because I'm listening to the audiobook, the worst part was when she started singing, and I was just like, I don't even like your voice talking. And it's worse now.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This is, I mean, that does not surprise me remotely.
Great. It still needs to have a cohesive plot at the end of the day.
Well, does it? I mean, a lot of books don't.
I'm like a character reader all the way, and I just don't like the way she does her characters. So
I love the way she does her characters. So it's like, you know.
I don't need plot.
Yeah. We did not need
a little plot, but I don't.
I need a little plot, but like, the world building and the characters and the themes, like.
Especially because of how much this opened up the world after reading the Farseer trilogy. It felt so, like we were talking, like you got to see the perspective of how people view the Six Duchies, and we're like, this is not a fairy tale land.
Nope.
Why are we idealizing?
Yeah.
Like it was just nice to get this massive perspective of different parts. And like at the end, getting Malta in, I still don't know how to pronounce it. Jamala. Like it was really nice to get like actual time in there beyond Wintro getting enslaved.
Again, I think if you have to wait for other books, other series for major plot points to pay off, that's bad writing.
See, I normally
well, I don't know if it's like bad writing, but it is a particular kind of writing that not everybody likes. Like, I love it. I think it's great, but like not everyone likes that, and that's fine.
So like,
I don't dislike it on principle. I just would have, like, if I were enjoying, like, if there were fewer frustrations, I'd be like, yeah, I'm willing to wait for the payoff. But I'm going to keep reading because I'm dumb.
Yeah, I
just like the one series I don't want.
As a writer, as someone who has studied writing for over a decade at this point, and that's one of those things that they tell you have to be careful about. And if this is the way that, like, if as much as is later in books as Derry is saying, like, that's kind of overkill. Like, it's one thing to have minor plot lines, but then to have like, or open up possibilities. It's another thing to have specific things that happen in this plot not make sense until you read another trilogy. So
yeah, I guess I didn't feel like there was anything that I was that unsatisfied with in this book, like, other than that one thing. Like, I'm very satisfied, and I would be happy to learn more. So like, to me, there isn't anything that feels to that level, but again, that's like my experience.
We all agree that we're just going to say Rain is 16, right?
Yes.
And then Rain and Malta are the same age, so that I can actually care about him.
Like,
Rain can be like, he could be like 17 or 18, and she can be like 16 by now, I think. Like, I don't know.
Okay,
He gave 17-year-old boy energy.
16 now.
He did,
but like,
honestly.
I agree.
He did give
like,
17-year-old
he struck me at the beginning. I think he was like 19 at the beginning of the series, but like, they don't really give you a lot of plot stuff.
I thought he was like 21 at the beginning.
Malta's like barely a teenager, and I'm like, I got it. She's young. She's being married.
Which is like I'm listening to a true crime podcast right now about a murder.
Jessica. Okay, I'm sorry.
I like it.
Okay, Jessica.
I didn't know I was going to have this experience. I believed everyone.
I did read the entire series, Jessica. There are 3 books. There's a difference between interconnected series and an entire series.
I think she means
the realm of
prepared
the
to read the Realm of the Elderlings series.
Well,
that is a hot take. That is a hot take.
That's what I was planning to do, and I probably still will, because normally I DNF series, no problem. And this is the one that I can't make myself do, because people act like you can't have an opinion until you're done. And I want to like definitively be like, no, here's how I feel for the whole thing.
I'm going to still stick on if you cannot, like, if you're going to, I'm not saying you shouldn't read the whole series. But I am saying there are certain things that are bad writing, and making your readers have to do stuff like that is bad writing. That's my hot take.
But I like it, so I don't care. It can be bad, and I like it. I will buy it and read it, and I'm not the only one, you know? Yeah. Like, I guess that's the thing, is like, I just don't believe that there is one thing that is good writing. Like, I think you can like, that can mean many things, and I highly question anybody who's like, this thing is good writing. I think, like, you learn the basics, and then you can do, like, you mess with it. And like, some of them,
I understand that, but like, the key rule of writing is, at the end of the day, audience satisfaction, and how well is
and half of us are satisfied.
I know, and that's like, I think I wouldn't be as frustrated if I didn't feel like, I mean, I'm like, I'm sorry you had a bad experience, but I am relieved that I'm not going to be the one with the most negative opinion, because like truly, I feel like I read different books than everyone else, and it makes me so sad.
Like I am still willing to read the whole series based on how Assassin's Quest goes. Because if I have 2 series that end at the end of the day, like in a way that I'm not happy with, I probably won't continue on.
Which I think is fair. Like,
I'm be disappointed in Assassin's Quest like I was, but we'll see.
Like, if this was one 12-book series, like that's how it was marketed, perfect. Go ahead.
Well, and I think what's tricky about it is the difference between her plans and her publishing contracts.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the thing, is like, after the first trilogy, she did plan to have all of this, but she was probably only getting a publishing contract for like set books at a time. So like, that's...
In regards to Jessica's comment, I understand it's an entire world. Jessica said you can't expect it to have all in just 1 or 2 trilogies. An entire world. You don't have all the details yet. The details that are added should be on top of what you've already established. It should not be this big thing does not make sense until you have this.
You don't feel that way though, because I felt like this was a complete
Like I felt that way too. Like
trilogy.
yeah, that's how I felt.
That's not the impression I am getting from certain comments here that are saying like
Well,
these
I think
your heart.
I think it's like there's a couple of specific things that you guys were really bothered by that make more sense in certain future books, but like in general, I did feel like this was a very complete, satisfying trilogy.
Yeah, for me, it's like I don't mind waiting for the world and the connections between series. Like that actually doesn't bother me as much. It does bother me that this series is like designed to be reread to actually like get what's going on. But like I think my issue is like mostly character stuff and themes and the way that she uses those. And that's something that I'm not sure reading more books will fix.
And
like,
I think probably not, honestly.
Yeah.
Like if you don't like that, I think that's probably just like a matter of like you not liking what she does, you know?
Yeah. But I'm probably
I feel like I can recommend this as a series in and of itself.
Yeah.
Like I know we were talking about it last book. I think that if you hadn't read the Farseer trilogy, you probably won't get as much out of this. But I still, having finished this, I still don't feel that way because I feel like if people are more like multi-POV readers, this could be a good way to at least dip their toes into Robin Hobb and see if her style, because she has a very distinct style of writing her books. I feel like this is a great way to get used to it. And I don't feel like your experience is lessened by maybe not having read the Farseer books. And I don't feel like you have to. I mean, like a part of me, like the little demon part of me agrees with Jessica that like you should commit to the whole series, but that's just because I will always champion Robin Hobb. But I feel like you could, to me this felt complete as
like you could just
trilogy.
read it and I mean I would agree.
Okay, that makes more sense because I'm sitting here like reading the comments thinking it's like specific plot world building things that don't make sense in this book.
No, I think it's just that there were a couple of specific things that like bothered you guys that she's saying do get explained in different ways later on. But I mean I think that's true of other things that I read as well. So I don't know. I also just think that like people like different things from their books and like want like I love books where you get more out of it on a reread, like where you can just read it once, but if you read it again, you're going to get way more. I like that is one of my favorite things.
I love rereading stuff.
I
still want the basic story to make sense.
Which I guess I feel like I do.
Maybe this is based on reviews I've seen more than like how the series is actually marketed. Because I love rereading. Like if I love a book, I'm even more excited to like love it again. So maybe it's more about like reviews. People act like any issue you have will be fixed by rereading it.
Right. Which I mean, like may or may not be the case, you know? And I mean, I think a good example is like, I just did a reread of the First Law trilogy and it was true that I enjoyed it more on a reread, especially the first book. I enjoyed it a lot more on a reread. I got a lot more out of it. But I don't think it's a perfect book. And like the second book, I still had the same issues with that I did the first time that are based on just like my preferences. So it's like, that's a good example of a series where like, it is the case that you will get way more out of it on a reread than on the first time you read it, but that doesn't necessarily fix all of your like personal things that your preferences with it, you know?
And for me, I think it's completely possible, like separate like your opinion of a book from the quality of its writing.
Right.
If that makes sense. Cause like I've had books that I'm like, this is bad writing, but I love the book anyways. And this is good writing, but I hate this book. But I'll still talk about like the writing was fantastic and that'll still affect my rating. Like I said with the Sanderson book, it got 3 stars when it normally would have gotten 1 because of what he did at the end. Because the way he brought everything together was
I think also Robin Hobb is one of those authors where there's like this meta level of like your expectations and how she's held up in the fantasy world. Because like at this point I've seen a lot of like recommendations and reviews, and like kind of we were joking about earlier, is like nobody wrote a character before Robin Hobb was born. And so it's hard not to have those really sky high expectations, because I know there are some things that wouldn't have bothered me as much if I hadn't, like people were saying that for the 90s the sexual assault was handled fairly well, which I think is true, but I also did not have that expectation going in. I was told this was done well, period. And I also keep thinking about older books I've read that do similar things better, and so I feel like Robin Hobb's like fandom is so intense that you kind of can't help but factor that into how you feel about
That's fair. I mean, and I think that's the thing, is like I've tried to stay away from very much information about the series before coming to it, because I didn't want too much of that to influence it. But I mean, I think that totally makes sense. I don't
think that's possible though, for like Bingtown, the Rain, like all of that, like that's kind of one of the things that it's going to be continually changing, because those things are like continually changing.
Well, which I think, and I think this is the difference between like a YA, honestly, like most YA fantasy and most adult fantasy. Like a YA fantasy is going to wrap everything up for you in a neat bow more often than not. Most adult fantasy will not do that, and it's still considered a complete story. It's just you're not going to get everything, all your answers or everything tied up. But yeah,
that's how I feel. Like I didn't love Ship of Destiny, but dang if it wasn't a good series.
I mean, this is like one of my favorite series now. Like honestly, I love it. So yeah,
I've never felt so many emotions reading a series, and that's been the same with the Farseer trilogy. And this one, it's just like I have never felt visceral reactions to characters as I have in this.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Too.
I mean, it would be interesting. Like, I would like to know more about the dragons in future books, but I guess I just also don't think that that's like key to what this series is doing.
Oh, see, I think that then getting to the nesting grounds really wrapped that plot up really well.
For me, that's
because I feel like you could have ended it, and not had any further stuff, and still had like that kind of feeling that like the dragons are going to come back. It's talking about how some of them are going to hatch. Like the last point of view we have is Caesarea.
Yeah,
like, I would say Caesarea, but I don't know.
So yeah,
I like that. I like that we actually got this like feeling of hope that like we're gonna see dragons come back into this world.
Yeah,
I like that a lot, actually.
I like that we finally got like the recognition from the old traders that like Bingtown is not the same as it was a couple hundred years ago, and y'all need to accept that there's other people here. Like, I found that really satisfying, is finally seeing everyone like, I don't know, band together on that. And like I didn't have to see, like that's an example of like I don't have to see the whole battle and everything wrapped up, because I see where things are going, and I think it makes sense.
Greg Tenaya with like the 3 ships girl, and like just like those little.
Had to pair him off so Althea didn't have to like worry.
I'm interested to see, knowing that Amber and the Fool are the same person, and certain comments from Amber in this series. I am so interested to see what happens with the dragons at the end of Assassin's Quest, because it makes it feel like something different has happened in Assassin's Quest, and I'm just like, okay.
Well,
that's one way to put it.
It's interesting because if you had read Assassin's Quest, there is a couple of lines in the first book of this trilogy that kind of addresses what you're talking about.
Okay, interesting.
But
it won't make sense until you finish Assassin's Quest.
I finish Assassin's Quest. Yeah. So, and like I've just had a much better time reading the Assassin's books.
Yeah.
General,
well, and so that's what I think's funny is like I have friends. So like Leanna far prefers the Assassin's trilogy. Like loves it. She liked the live ship, but like loved that more. And I just feel the opposite. So I just think people love different things in different ways. So and that's
I think that like. It especially has like, because I was telling Kara, like I have far fewer expectations with Assassin's Quest. I don't think it's about which one I started with, Derry. I think it's about how, because they're two very different.
They're very different series. Yeah, they're very different.
And
stories.
like there was a certain expectation I got at the beginning of Ship of Magic for what the plot was going to be, and there was a certain expectation that I got at the beginning of Assassin's Apprentice, and I haven't gotten to the end of the book, but so far it's been delivered on. like multiple times in the series. So
interesting.
So I have fewer expectations is what it comes down to right now. I'm just like, oh, we're just going to follow Fitz. And at some point we will follow Fitz again in another series.
See, Priscilla, I loved Liveship Traders a lot more as well. I mean, I liked Farseer fine, but like I love Liveship Traders. But like Leanna feels the opposite. So this is the thing, is like people just like different things, which is
I feel more emotionally invested in Fitz.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, we're all
I was just like, I'm like more emotionally invested in the Fitz and the Fool and Katrikin and Patience group. Even though I love the trilogy of the live shows more, I'm so pumped to be getting back into Fitz and the Fool and all like that storyline. I feel like I'm more like on Leanna's side. I still need to watch. You guys did a live show of like Farseer versus live ships.
Maybe I can't remember.
Or was that, did Mara do that with Leanna?
Mara and Leanna did one, I think.
That might be the one, because I have it saved in my watch later, and I'm like, when I finish live ships, I want to watch that because.
Well, it's because Mara prefers live ships and Leanna prefers Farseer. So
that's funny. I will have to see when I get to the end of it, Derry, because right now I don't think it will make a difference in like my enjoyment or how the plot hits. Because again, the dragons are not my main. I care about the characters. I could care less about the dragons. I could also care less about the ships, except in the way that they are attached to certain people.
I'm so interested when you're done to see if you're angry or like, I don't know. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, because the thing
because there are some things that happen right at the end that I don't think you're gonna like.
Yeah, but I also think, Margaret, the thing that you think is my only problem with that book is not my only problem.
It's not your only problem. I just know that like that has given me forewarning that it will happen.
Yeah, it's not. I don't know if I would even say it's my biggest problem. I'd say it's like with Liveship, it's a symptom of other problems.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that you guys were talking about like emotional investment in like one series or the other, because that's another thing is it's not rare that I get emotionally invested in a series, so I can't really gauge this one based on that. Like I actually like had to kind of pull myself back a little bit after how frustrated I was with the first series, which I think is part of what helped my experience with this one. Because if I cared, I think I'd be even more angry about some things. So
see, I think I'm weird about this. This is probably unpopular and opinion or take or whatever, but like I really like authors who get me invested in the characters and break my heart. I like that.
Me too.
Like a lot of my honestly,
they're happy at the end.
No. I don't need them to be happy at the end. I like it when authors don't make them all happy at the end.
like what it makes.
I like it. Because it makes me feel things, which doesn't happen that much with books. So I love it when an author makes me fall in love with characters and then just like kind of destroys them and leaves them in a place that is like not great. Like I really like that in books. I think a lot of people hate it, but like I don't like
that into the series. I am fine with that. My favorite ending in the world involves my ship falling into hell. Like everyone else hates that ending, and I'm just like, yep, I know this author. I trust this author. Next book's gonna be great.
Yeah.
See, and this is why I'm like, her books are some of my favorites, is because I like that. Like, because I don't like a lot of authors. I'm like, yeah, this was fine. Like, I enjoyed this, but I don't have like big feelings,
Yeah, and it's like I do get big feelings about books, so I feel like that's why I don't give her like extra credit for that, or not extra credit, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Like, I'm already starting from a point of like, if you get me invested, I will stay invested. I will have big feelings. So
yeah. See, whereas like I think that's the thing, is it takes a lot for me to be emotionally invested in the first place. And so when I am, I'm like, oh, okay. Which I mean, honestly, like that is usually like emotional investment more often than not always, but like often is the thing that will elevate a book for me to like a favorite status.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, I don't get emotionally invested, but I also when Allegiant ended, I couldn't eat for 3 days. So
okay, like I loved that ending. Everyone hated that ending. I loved that ending. It was like perfect.
And here's the thing, they don't need to go where I expect them to go, but I need to be satisfied with where they are. And again, I am not satisfied with where Althea is, and she was my favorite character. Especially considering the ship eyes thing. That is just like...
That's fair. I think she just, like, she wasn't my favorite character, so I was like more, okay,
Yeah,
but
no.
have a good night. We'll probably end soon too, because we've been talking for a while, but
It
yeah.
is 11 p.m.
It is. Yes.
And see, I don't mind having just one point of view at all.
I wouldn't mind if Fitz
If you
was a
liked
more
him?
intelligent person. Yeah. Like, I'm so sad, you guys. I gave the second book
We can put it that way.
4 stars. I gave it 4 stars. I was having a great time. I was so excited for Robin Hobb, and look at me now. I'm the buzzkill of our group. That's my
It's
job.
okay. You know what? I think it makes for
something will
interesting
work here, Kara.
conversations. It's not like a bad, like, don't feel bad about it either. 'Cause, like, it's like, I think it makes for interesting conversation when we have like differing experiences with things. Because
It's fun for you to like humble. At least I feel that way because I'm like so like riding high on Hobb that it's like, okay, you're right. Like she's not all that.
I'm the vibe check.
Yeah, actually. It's actually super appreciated. That's what makes this
Oh,
like, this has been such a trip with you ladies. I have loved this so
it's
much.
been so fun. Yeah, I'm really
Gracious
glad
about my
we've been able to do
negativity.
this. No, it's you're good. I like honestly, I do think it makes for more interesting conversations than it just being like gushing about everything. I don't know.
I'm
I do
hoping
think
that
he
if
is-
there's somebody silently watching in the comments who also didn't like love this book, they're like, oh, there's somebody else.
We're like, thank God it's not only me. I mean, exactly. And so like you're speaking for the people who feel like they can't talk about it.
I mean, on the bright side, it did get me to pick up one of my works in progress again after having not looked at it for like a year.
There you go.
Because I'm like,
Hey.
we're going to go back to the story where the wronged woman gets retribution.
I mean, I like a good okay. If you want a good woman retribution story, I just finished one. It does get dark, but you definitely get intense. Is The Change by Kirsten Miller. It was one of the Book of the Month books last month, and it's like a blend of like witchy magical realism, murder mystery, and women's fiction about like menopausal women. And except that menopause, the change is like an actual physical metamorphosis involving power, and they're dealing with predatory men. So, like if you want something that is a good like awful men getting their comeuppance, that might
Sorry,
be.
what was your last name? What was her last name, Bethany?
Miller.
Miller. Okay.
Yeah.
The Change. Okay. Ooh, that looks kind of like a thriller too.
Yeah, it's got a murder mystery element, but also with like magical realism stuff.
Like one of my favorite series has terrible, terrible things happen to people. And the ending is not a happy-go-lucky ending, especially considering that we go into further books in the series and a whole bunch of people commit suicide as a result of the first book. Yeah. But it is still one of like it. I don't cry easily in books. It had me in Starbucks, like going, I'm not going to cry. 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 There are people watching me, but oh my God, Dot, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It is one of the most messed up books I've ever read. But
it's like I always struggle to answer questions, and it's like a book that makes you feel happy, and it's like a lot of my favorites are not super
happy.
Like there's happy moments, but if I tell you this book makes me happy, you'd be like, do you need a moment? Like
I mean, I do. I totally have books that are like fluffy happy. But yeah. But I think a lot of times I get that from my romance. Sometimes my Becky Chambers does that for me for sci-fi, but like a lot of my fantasy, I like it to like
I like
my
high
emotions.
stakes.
I like high stakes. I do too. Yeah. And I think that's part of why too, like YA has just become less and less what I want to be reading, because I'm like, I want darker, deeper characterization and higher stakes. I'm like, I don't know. Sometimes it does that, but not as.
I think it depends on the YA and what you're looking at.
Right. And like what's like, I think the trends in publishing change like everything else. So it's like if people are picking, it depends on what people are looking for. Like I think I don't know, the whole age range system I'm not going to get into, but it's
I think also considering like certain things that were in the I'm not going to get but certain things that just happened this week, having a book where you have a woman who is gaslit by a very powerful man really does not sit right now.
Yeah.
Aw.
I'm excited. That's our book club pick for this month for Patreon book club. I'm so excited. Excited to read that one.
That is true. Again, like I said, if you can stick the landing for me, I have given Very Odd Books 5 stars.
Yeah. Well, like Asking For It by Louise O'Neill is absolutely gut-wrenching and brutal, and it ends exactly how it would probably end in the real world. And I think, and that was like a 5-star for me. Like, I think that was incredible, and it fit with the story, and it was set up in a way that made sense. So I think it comes down to not just what makes sense for the book, but how well you think that they're executing their intention.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But
yeah.
And who your favorite character is.
See, I know better. I don't have favorites anymore. So like, I had my 3 that I liked more.
Yeah.
I had my 3 that I liked more, but I'm like, Robin Hobb, you have lost my trust, so I will not have feelings about your books.
Yeah. There are certain authors,
fine.
I know you're going to disagree with me, Kara. I know you're going to disagree with me, Kara. But like Rick Riordan, I would trust him to go anywhere because I know my faves are not going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I can't kill off the character based off of my wife. That wouldn't work. And one of them is based off of my son. Also can't do that. So.
It's funny.
Versus like some stuff I do go through, like I'm not getting attached to anyone. I did Hunger Games like that. I'm not getting attached to anyone until I know how this ends.
See, like I'll get attached and then just let my heart be broken.
I like
like,
feeling it.
I like the feelings.
Like we could talk about I don't know if you guys ever watched Castle, but the season ending of Castle, it's a happy ending. It was series ending, terribly executed. Like one of the worst executed happy series endings ever.
Terry.
Yeah, and I also think that like
30 years, I think.
I also think that high stakes doesn't have to mean the same kind of sad ending every time. Like I feel like that's that can be kind of an assumption.
It doesn't have to be sad. Like it can be bittersweet too.
Right. I tend to love like a well done bittersweet ending.
I just want like consequences. That's the thing I felt. I felt really disillusioned with YA for a long time, and like it's not all series, but I felt frustrated that at the end of everything everyone would be okay, and I don't like that. I want there to be some kind of emotional impact because there are high stakes.
Right.
Okay. Well, I could give you some recommendations, Dasha. If you want to
please.
Terrible Beauty series, Dasha.
Sorry?
Have you read the Great and Terrible Beauty series by Libba Bray?
Ugh.
No, I thought that was like a historical fiction.
It's
historical fantasy.
It's historical fantasy.
Portal fantasy with gay women. It's great. In corsets at a boarding school. It's so good.
I hated that series at the big. Oh, this is going to be so hypocritical. I hated that series when I read it just because of how it ended, and I didn't like a certain ending. But if you like books that have emotional impact, because that was another one where I felt like everyone but the main character got a happy ending. She then fixes it in another series, and I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I don't hate that series anymore. But I'm not reading it again. But it is very like the ending is just like it hits you. Like
I need to reread those. It's A Great and Terrible Beauty by Libba Bray is the first one.
Great and Terrible Beauty.
I read those when I was in college and was obsessed.
So did I. I was so disappointed.
Which also, like, how did it take me to 30 to realize I wasn't straight?
Bethany, like, in hindsight.
I read her other series, the Diviner series, which is also very good. Also has a lot of like really like gut wrenching stuff. I did almost quit the last book. Oh my god! I did almost quit the last book because one of my friends on Twitter, we had the same favorite character, and so he was tweeting things that was like, "Oh no, what happened?" So I had to skip ahead to like because I was so attached to these characters 4 books in. I had to skip ahead, make sure that they were at the end of the book, and then I was like, okay, I can finish.
Now I'm stressed. Thank you, because I still have to finish the Diviners.
I do too. I haven't. I think I read the first.
I read the first 2.
I read the first 2 also. I want to at some point.
It does have a trigger warning for SA, by the way.
Well, we just read this, so.
like a trigger warning that I didn't even think to warn a friend about and really fucked them up because it was their favorite character too.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So.
All right. Well, we've been talking for over 2 hours about this, so I think it's probably about time to wrap it up because it is late for some of us. But this has been really fun. Thank you all for joining me, and it's been good conversation. I I do plan to continue at some point, so stay tuned. I have a lot on my plate right now, so I don't know when, but at some point. It might be next year.
Break.
What?
Next year would probably be.
We need a little Hobb break.
Yeah, need a Hobb break. I'm thinking next year because I still have to finish. I'm doing 2 year-long series read-alongs with Leanna this year too. So I'm like, I think 2023 we might do some more Hobb. So
Maybe.
I will probably do more Hobb in 2023, and I don't know who all will join me or won't, but that's kind of my thought.
We'll see if I wait that long. I have so much to read though. So much.
Yeah, same. Well, and also next year, I kind of want to see about getting people together to do a read along for like the 4 Brandon Sanderson books because I did do the Kickstarter.
Yeah, I did that one too. I did that one too.
I might have forgotten about it, but I do want to read them.
Well, they will be available for like ebook and audiobook within like a couple weeks. So
yeah, my thing was like if I was going to get them, it was going to be the hardcover bound editions, and I just could not financially do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was pricey, but
it was. I did it too.
Yeah. I did.
Yeah, actually, a read along for that would be great because it would make me use those purchases.
That was my thought. Then it's a business expense.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
I feel like they need to do some sort of like traditionally published paperback so that libraries can also get them.
Well, he has said that eventually they will get more traditionally published, but for now it's gonna it'll be ebooks and audiobooks. Libraries can get those. And then eventually they probably will get traditionally published, but because the timeline for traditional publishing is like a couple years, so like it may be a while before.
Yeah. And he also has a whole bunch of other stuff that he's supposed to be publishing.
Exactly. And Tor doesn't want to publish that many of his books in a year because of their timelines and paper shortages. And
and because they're so freaking thick.
Yeah, that too. So anyway. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Have a great night. And we'll see you later.